Okay. Hi everyone. Let me see if you can see me quite well. We're gonna be cooking, making some fermented, well, I'm going to be making some fermented apple chutney. Sort of like an Indian style. That's the one I usually make at my workshops. I'll put this. Let me know if you can hear me well, so I don't want to be talking to myself. Can you guys hear me well? Hi everyone who is joining. Today's in English, so ребята, кто по-русски, возможно, что проведу еще такой эфир, ну вот сегодня пока по-английски. Okay, hi guys. Anyways, while everyone is joining, I'm going to, this is I think the first one from my kitchen, so as you can see I have lots of fermenting friends in the back. I've got some magical pot fermenting some of my activating yogurt. I'm activating Vili yogurt. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not. We'll see. And that is the pot. It's a clay pot from my friend and from Malaysia. And this pot is, I think, magical because this is lactose. You can scrape it off. And if you taste it, it's really, really sweet. So it's filtering out lactose for some reason. Anyways, I'm gonna see how my experiment going on. And I have some yellow beetroot fermenting slash fermenting probably in very strong kombucha with spices, of course. And as you can see, I hope you can see that it's really, really bubbly. And I have another one that is in absolutely the same kombucha, but it has no bubbles. And I'm like, it's like I'm marinating it more than anything. So, and it even changed the color. Same substrate, but completely different process going on, which I'm still experimenting with. So anyways, let's start with chutney. The chutney, I usually just use whatever I've got in the house, and today I've got apples, so I'm gonna make the apple chutney. It works really well for pears as well, so whichever one, or the combination of both. And I'm going to cube that. How you chop it, it really doesn't matter, it's up to you. It can be quite large pieces, chunks. Some people prefer to blend that together with all the spices that we're gonna add later, which is fine as well. And today I'm going to do the raw version of this, because you can also cook. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Guys, put the plus if you can hear me, if what I'm saying is decipherable. You can understand what I'm saying and can hear it. So I'm going to cube that. I'm not going to make too much today. So as I was saying, you can also cook this, in which case you would need to add some sort of a starter, because obviously when you cook something, it kills all the microorganisms, all the bacteria and yeast. So it's going to rot. If you cook something and leave it to ferment, it will just rot. Yeah, and essentially rotting and fermentation are two same processes, but different microorganisms are involved. So there we go. Cubing it can be quite rough. I prefer to leave all the goodness, as in skins, intact. Plus you got to remember that There's lots of microorganisms, beneficial microorganisms that we want for the fermentation on this skin. So really, really want this. Plus, it adds beautiful color. When you're choosing your vegetables, or fruit in this case, choose as fresh as possible, yeah, and try using it straight away. Of course, as a food waste tackling technique, fermentation is perfect as well. And if you've got some sad-looking veg or fruit, I would advise to cook that, because if it's not very fresh, it's my water kefir, by the way. Very nice and refreshing. So when you try to ferment old veg or fruit, what you get is very often you can get some calm yeast, which isn't harmful to humans, but it's just not really desirable in your ferment, really. It's really easy to get mold in such ferments, so try to go for very fresh fruit. Right, so we're gonna finish cutting those. And as with any fermented recipe, recipes usually, I take a recipe as guidelines, really, more than like serious thing that you have to go through. Okay, that's a step by step, yeah. You can always experiment. You can always substitute some ingredients. For example, I look at the recipe and I'm like, okay, well, I'm really, really keen on doing it right now, but I don't have this. So I'm thinking, okay, what can I substitute that with? So in case of, if it's a pineapple, if it's an apple, and you don't have an apple, you can start with, you know, it can be even, it can be mango even, why not? It can be some other fruit. It can be pear. Pear works really well. It can be combination. If you have just one apple and one pear and maybe something else, you can combine those. So don't feel restricted by the recipe. So anyways, these apples are cut up now, and I'm going to squeeze some lemon on top so they don't go brown. Yeah, we don't want the chutney to go brown. It will go brown a little bit because we're going to put, there we go. Yeah, something like this. I'm going to, yeah, going to do that. Now, I usually take recipes very broadly, and I use a little bit of that, a little bit of this. Obviously, if you're just starting your fermentation journey and you just starting to experiment, it's a good idea to probably stick to the recipe a few times. I'm going to rinse my hands. There we go. Good idea to stick to the recipe, but then later, when you're more confident with what you're doing, I'm using some spring onion. Yeah, do experiment, because sometimes I'm looking at my spice and thinking, ooh, what if I add this one, or ooh, what if I add that one? Plus, when you do add various ingredients, you have to remember that each ingredient has its own nutritional value, yeah, vitamins, minerals, and whatnot. So this table is a bit wobbly. I don't know if you can see that. It's really hard to work on it. So those ingredients, they add to the nutritional profile of your end product or your ferment, as well as they add to the microbial profile of that ferment, because different fibers, they feed, first of all, they've got on them, different vegetable fruit have different microbes, communities of microbes on them. Just go like that, yeah, I'm just quartering those. And obviously that adds into the nutritional and into the microbial profile of the ferment, which is really, really useful, because as you know, general advice is to strive for diversity. So the more different microorganisms, beneficial microorganisms you can get into your gut, the better. Yeah. So I'm going to throw away. Right. There we go. And as I was saying before, you can always, if you're not a fan of chopping things, yeah, you just quarter things and roughly chop and put it in a food processor. Done. So you can do even that. Doesn't really matter. Look, it's already looking quite pretty. I'm going to also add some red onion. Yeah, and those, by the way, red onion, green onion, they act as prebiotics as well. So they have prebiotic fiber that feeds the beneficial colonies of in our gut, of the bacteria in our gut. So your ferment is going to be not only probiotic, meaning has some good bacteria for your gut, but also prebiotic, meaning has some food for your bacteria as well. I hope you can see that. I hope you can see that. I don't know. Let me move this a little bit. Maybe you don't see me as much as what I'm doing. Anyways, I'm usually doing that, so it's faster and easier to chop. And I like my onion to be chopped quite roughly, because generally I like onion. So something like this. Yeah? You can then do this if you like. So I add 2 types of onion. The spring onion, yeah, let's see, and a little bit. How much, usually quantities, I measure with my eye. I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, ooh, yeah, that's good. Or, maybe a little bit more, yeah? So I'm going to just judge that. And as I like onion quite a lot, I'm going to use a bit more of that onion. I have quite large onions here. And I'm going to add some more of the prebiotic fiber into my future ferment. Yeah, I'm going to repeat myself and say that we are making some apple chutney, Indian style. Right, there's some strange bits I'm going to throw away. Ooh, I think I'm going to cry. Maybe not, we'll see how tough I am, because this one is not very strong. Okay, so here we go. So we have quite a lot. Right. I'm gonna do this because I can see that those chili pepper, whichever variety, but mind you, depending on what sort of tolerance you've got and what sort of heat you like in your ferment, choose accordingly. Yeah, sometimes people just don't put. You can even omit the chili pepper altogether. That's up to you. I'm probably going to, plus different varieties, they have different heat, so you might want to use, sometimes I use just chili flakes, but if I have some live fresh pepper, I like to use it. I like fresh ingredients. Okay, I think this one, and at the end, even during the fermentation, you can actually adjust your taste flavors. And usually when I make the ferment, I leave it in a couple of hours to sit in its own juices, and then after that I taste it. Yeah, from day 0 I taste it to see, okay, because obviously fermentation is going to adjust the flavors and adjust the taste, but on the initial stage and I allow the ferment to be a little bit, for example, in this case, it will be a little bit sweet as well. Yeah, it will be heat. There will be some heat and there will be some sweetness as well. So to counteract each other. Yeah. And in this case, obviously I try to make it sweet enough. So later, when it ferments, and usually ferment takes about a week, depends really on the temperature and other factors. Can be even up to a couple of weeks. Then you would you allow enough sweetness, so when it ferments, it's still sweet enough, so it's really kind of like adds to the taste. Yeah, so the taste, because we're looking for in chutney, we're looking for both chilliness and saltiness and the sweetness all together. So if you make it without anything, if you don't allow for quite enough sweetness in the beginning, you might end up with quite sour ferment, which is not, I mean, again, it all depends on your taste buds, because we all have different taste buds and they're trained on different things. All right, a little bit of my water cap here. Okay, what else do we need? At this stage, I'm going to add a little bit more my lemon juice. At this stage, I'm going to also the same thing with the salt. I usually just go with the salt. Yeah, I'm just of course when I write up the recipe in for my workshops, obviously I do provide the amounts. And again, the amounts are just guidelines, because you can always add a little bit more, a little bit less, it depends. In this case, I'm probably going to go for, I have this pretty. The salt, actually the salt I'm using is sea salt, unrefined, quite large sea salt, not the fine one. I really like this large variety. So a little bit of salt. And then, as I said before, I'm going to adjust the flavor, adjust the taste, so, and the saltiness as well. It should be salty, but not too much. And whenever you're experimenting like this, always try to write down the ingredients and the amounts. So then after you ferment it for a week, and then it will take you a few weeks to eat that ferment, and at that point you will be like, ooh, there it was really nice ferment. What if I make it again? And then after 3-4 weeks you will not remember what you put in there. So yeah, or how many of everything, the amount. So right, at this point I'm going to add some nuts and seeds. Там меня слышно, сестра? Да, скажи, если слышно хорошо. Там плюсик мне поставь. And usually, as well as just with any other ingredient, I go, I just use whatever I've got at home, yeah? So I don't have any sunflower seeds, because I usually put some sunflower seeds as well. So I'm going to use some pumpkin seeds. And I try to use probably a handful. And I try to use most of my ingredients organic. Yeah, you don't want the pesticides and herbicides in your food. I'm going to use some of the mixed nuts by Abel & Cole. I can't see that anyways. I'm going to, those are quite large, so I'm going to chop them up. I'm going to put those away. I'm going to chop them up, just a few. I think that's enough, yeah. I'm going to just roughly chop them. And again, how you chop those things, that's really up to you. You can, you know, do it really small, very fine. You can leave them quite large chunks. I prefer large chunks. Obviously, how small with the fermentation, the smaller pieces you got, the smaller chunks you got, the faster it will ferment, opposed to the same temperature and the same conditions and larger chunks. Yeah, so obviously it's not only that determines the time for fermentation, but pretty much that is one of the factors. So this is what I've got. Oops. Yeah. Put it in here. I'm going to show you. So that's what we've got now. Some seeds, nuts. I'm going to mix everything up. And I'm going to also determine, like, okay, well, do I like this? Does it look pretty? Does it look nice? Does it look enough? Yeah, for me it looks, I think it looks enough. It looks fine. So the next thing I'm going to do is clean my chopping board. I'm going to use some ginger. My ginger is not that fresh, because normally I would just scrub the ginger. I'm gonna do some of it now. My ginger is not that fresh. I have some leftovers, so but I'm going to still use it. I'm gonna chop some off. Again, how much ginger you use is entirely up to you, because the ginger adds the heat as well. So I'm just going to, and at this point you can just grate it. Personally, I prefer a little bit of the texture of the ginger in my ferment, so I usually slice it as fine as I possibly can. Yeah. And then I sort of julienne it. Там, сестра, громко, хорошо, отлично. Можешь чуть тише. Ага, хорошо. So that's what I'm... Hope you can see it. А видно хорошо, да, Оль? Что там комментарии закрывают, как понимаю. It's my sister who is in there helping me out a little bit. So this is what it's going to look like. And I try to also do it as fine as possible. Yeah, so that's how it looks. It's quite thin. Супер, отлично, отлично. Благодарю, дорогая моя. And I'm going to add a little bit more of the heat. I'm going to scrub this one as well, so you can see what I'm doing. Guys who are going to be checking me out later, and guys who are looking at me, watching me now, do you have any interesting recipes for your... Do you actually make the chutney like this? And do you ferment it, or do you make it fresh? Do you make it cooked? Which variety do you prefer, cooked or fresh? Because I really like both, really. But today I'm going to be making fresh variety. Actually, I'm making this for my workshop in a few weeks, I think 2 or 3 weeks. So I'm going to allow this to ferment really nicely. Alright, so I'm doing the same, yeah, here. Everything is moving here. So I'm trying to do as fine as possible. And as I was saying before, you can just grate yours. That's not a problem at all. It's just I prefer this texture of the ginger, quite rough texture of the ginger. And it's going to soften up, and because when the fermentation starts, lactic acid bacteria, among other bacteria, is going to pre-digest the fiber and change the structure of your food. Yeah, so it's not going to be the same. The same with the heat of the chili. It's going to dial down the heat. Right. So now I'm going to use, because I like my chutney to be sweet and hot at the same time, and salty at the same time. So I'm going to use some of the sultanas, also a handful. And again, as I was saying before, I'm going to taste later to adjust the flavors and taste. I'm going to use, shall I? What I've got here, got some, couple of, I'm going to use, I'm going to use a couple of, maybe even more, let's see, dates, because dates are I really like the taste of dates, and I'm going to chop them like this. You see that? Can be quite rough. If you haven't got any of that, you can always add some honey. If you don't want to add honey, or you don't have honey, you can always add some sugar, and it doesn't have to be white sugar if you're not using that, because I don't have white sugar in my house. You can use coconut sugar, and you can use jaggery. It's an Indian, by the way, jaggery will go really well here. And plus, remember that each different sugar variety or sweetener has its own specific flavor, so it will add to the end product. So before, probably if you're using the sugar, you would know the sweetener, but if not, if something like, I don't know, you went and bought some jaggery and you think, oh, I wonder how that will be together, you can always taste the jaggery and try to imagine, because this is what the cooking is about. You're imagining things, and you're trying to first have an idea about the ferment, and then create that in the reality. So there we go. This is how this looks. Already looks quite tasty, and I'm going to taste a little bit. That's really nice. Needs a little bit more salt a bit later, but we're not done. We still need to add some, put that away, this as well. I'm going to put some spices, and with spices you can actually just stop right there. I usually always add some black peppercorns. Where are they? There you go. Yeah, some black peppercorns. I always use that into all sorts of chutneys of mine. And you can stop right there, or you can add a little bit more and make it more interesting. And each time, actually, you can add something else. So with black pepper, I really prefer to grind my own. So I'm going to add a bit in the grinder. And as you can see, I don't have any amounts or anything like that. So my table is not going to crash. There you go. Of course, you can use ground spices. But I like to release the flavor right there and then. Yeah, it's quite rough. I'm going to do that. And I'm going to use some of the coriander. If I got ground coriander, I'm sure I do. I'm going to use some coriander as well. I'm going to use the seeds. Obviously you can do, I don't have fresh coriander with me today, but I prefer to put the fresh ones as well. Not only it adds interesting, nice color, variety, it also adds some absolutely different flavor from, as opposed to the seeds. Plus, as I was saying before, it adds some prebiotic fiber. Yeah. There we go. Again, you can use grinder or can use ground spices. Let's see, I've got some pink peppercorns. They're quite soft, and I think I'm going to just, because there was sweet peppercorns, red peppercorns, you can just, they're quite soft, so you can just do that. Probably that's what I'm going to do. They're just going to add some color, some nutritional value, and some nice flavor as well. They have very interesting flavor. And when you combine your spices, as I was saying before, good idea to imagine for yourself, ooh, I wonder if that's... So, I mean, any ideas you've got in combining different spices, try using them, because that develops your sense of understanding how spices combine and what you prefer personally. Cumin seeds. I'm going to add quite a bit. I have some ground cumin seeds. I mean, I have some ground cumin, but I want to add today. I want to add a little bit more texture. So I'm going to lightly grind it. Yeah. There we go. Супер, можешь тише чуть, okay, поняла? And I'm going to put the whole thing. Right, well, we've got mustard, probably not. Right, I'm also going to add a little bit of ground cloves. To probably add something like probably a teaspoon, maybe half a teaspoon, because cloves can overpower quite easily, so I'd rather add a little bit more later. Put this away. I'm going to mix everything up. Obviously, all those spices and dried fruit are going to change the color of your ferment, and while fermenting, the fermentation process, bacteria are going to change not just flavor and not just texture, but also the color of your ferment, so it will look quite different. There you go. That's how it looks. Right. Hi everyone who's joining. We're making some fermented apple chutney, and I'm almost done with the recipe. Nice. I need some more sweetness and some more salt. A bit more salt. You don't have to, but I prefer to speed up the process of fermentation just a tiny bit. My water kefir. I prefer to add some starter, well, not really starter, but a little bit of a culture from a previous ferment. And by previous ferment, any previous ferment, I mean. Here I've got, look, I have some peppers, chili peppers fermenting in the brine, salted brine. And when I use them for making sriracha. I usually leave aside some of that liquid, because I don't use all the liquid for the sriracha. So I'm going to use some of it, and that's teeming with probiotic bacteria. So I'm going to add a little bit more heat, 2 tablespoons, and I just keep it in the bottle in my fridge. Yeah, can keep quite a long time. This one is there for, oh, God knows how long. Probably a few months, definitely. And yeah, if there's no funny formation on the top, then it's fine. Plus, usually when it goes bad, it changes the smell and flavor as well. So, I'm going to add that. So when you have a recipe that calls for a certain amount of acid, which can be a lemon juice or it can be vinegar, do substitute when you want to use some of the cultured to introduce some of the culture, as I've done with the juice, with the brine from my fermenting peppers. It can be sauerkraut brine, it can be that same water kefir, yeah, anything with live probiotic bacteria. So you can either, depending on what you're making, you can either substitute half of that lemon juice with your water kefir or whatever you're using to introduce the culture. Or you can use only the culture, depending on how acidic that is and how if it introduces enough acidity for your taste. Yeah, so you go ahead and taste. Nice. At all times. Very nice. I'm probably going to use a little bit more. That's enough spices, definitely. Probably going to use a little bit more. Should I add some chili pepper? Let me taste again. Obviously, the fermentation is going to change the taste, yeah? So it's not going to be the same as you're tasting now. You know what? I'm probably going to use a little bit more because I'm lacking a little bit of acidity. A little bit more of this. And a little bit of heat. I like my chutney to be quite spicy. I'm going to do this and a little bit more of lemon juice. Okay, I rinse my hand. Hopefully not tipple over my salt. Okay, I definitely tasted a little lack of sweetness. So I'm going to, this is how it looks, yeah. So I'm going to use a little bit of honey. I don't have, do I have jaggedy actually? No. I'm going to use some honey. 1 teaspoon. And when you adjust your taste, your flavors in there, probably like this big teaspoon. Nice. Do let it sit in this bowl. When you mix everything up, do let it sit for an hour. Because during that hour, within that hour, the bacteria will start doing the magic, and the taste, everything is going to mix up well, and everything will be incorporated properly. All the juices are going to be released, so the taste will change slightly, and you want to taste it again just to make sure that yes, I'm happy with the sweetness, I'm happy with the heat, I'm happy with the saltiness. And after that hour, yeah, when you check your ferment, you can put that into the jar. So I'm going to do the same, and probably going to shoot some stories. I'm going to leave in the stories how I pack my ferment into the, yeah, here we go. How I pack my ferment into the jar. Because the packing, the technique of packing your ferment into the jar is quite important as well, to keep the ferment going the way you like it, yeah, going to the way of lactic fermentation, without any unwanted microorganisms like mold or calm yeast or anything else. So you want to keep it, basically you want to keep it safe and tasty for that, and you want it to keep your ferment as long as it possibly can. Yeah, obviously each ferment has its own shelf life, yeah, whether in the fridge or not. There we go, apple chutney for anyone who's joining. So I'm going to incorporate my honey a bit further to make sure that it goes to all the corners. So the packing, I'm going to leave the packing how I pack in the stories, so you can see how to correctly pack your ferment. And obviously, if you go online and check different recipes, each ferment will have hundreds of different ways to make it. Yeah, so there will be many different recipes for certain ferment and different techniques of packing the jar. Some just throw things in the jar and say, "Ooh, it's going to ferment," and I'm thinking, "Ooh, no, it's not going to ferment. It's going to rot, actually." But you know, that's fine. But I'm going to show you how I usually do this, and with my practice, I find that my method works for me. And again, you might not be happy with my method, and you might want to go and check some safer methods, like easier to use, something with airlocks or special jars. Got cult culture high. Guys, I wonder when you will have your fermentation kits. That not fermentation kits, but that jar thing. Would you please let me know? Right, so I'm going to use this. I'm going to leave this. Yeah, I'm going to leave this to sit. I'm going to probably close it like that. There you go. I'm going to cover it with a chopping board. Leave my tablespoon on top so later I can taste it. And I'm going to go and do other things. And I'm going to leave this for an hour. After an hour, I'm going to taste this and see how, and adjust the taste, adjust the flavors if I need to. And I'm going to pack that into the jar. I'm going to look, first I'm going to, evaluate how big a jar I would need. And the packing, I will either do short life or leave it in the information in the stories. So anyways, thank you everyone for watching me. I hope it was useful. I hope you had fun. And let me know if you have any questions. Bye everyone for now. And